Hey there, honey bunnies. Welcome to the Sovereign Storytellers podcast with your host, Michelle Wolf. Episode 145 Keeping Your Balance Amidst the Chaos. I put out a call on Facebook this morning just to get some ideas. I'm never short of ideas for things to write about, but I put it out on my Facebook page to see what other people wanted to hear about, and actually got so many good things. I'm pretty well set for the next month or two. But this one required a podcast because I am getting over COVID and managed to put off getting it for 3 years. Thank you, vaccines and boosters. And I just was like, okay, this one I think would take more energy to write. So I thought, well, let's just do a podcast about it. So Lindsay, who's an amazing person, posted navigating the intensity of the collective, how to stay focused and aligned within yourself when you're aware of the energy hooks, programming, and manipulation taking place behind the scenes. I'm going to assume world events and personal events, right? Especially when you have to interact with others and the mainstream. She says, I feel like it's easy to say, remove yourself and isolate, go inward, etc. But it's not always easy when your feet are on the ground, submerged in the world or in it. So this is a really common conundrum for sensitive folks, you know, and people who are really in tune with their psychic abilities. And if you're auditory, it can be especially difficult. So earlier today, I brought in a session with a client. I mentioned how Don Miguel Ruiz, the author of The Four Agreements, Mastery of Love, which is an excellent book, etc., and Voices of Knowledge, talks about the Toltec concept of the mind being a parasite. I don't love that. I don't love thinking about it as a parasite, our mind. But in that concept, it's like there is this parasitic energy that we all have to deal with, and it has a voice, etc. But so I just mentioned that because that topic has come up a couple of times just today before I even saw that post. So it's a different level of development when you are moving through the world and you have done enough work and are practiced and experienced enough with your natural psychic abilities to hear people talking and only hear one voice. What I mean by that is you hear what people are saying, but you also hear what people are not saying. You're able to hear multiple streams of information. So it goes from like a single voice that you can hear to being able to hear the whole orchestra. So you can hear the string section, you can hear the woodwinds, you can hear the drums, you can hear the brass, where in the past you might have just been able to hear that person's voice or the one sound. When that's first happening to you, it can be super disorienting. And then after it happens to you, and you are like, okay, well, I see a person's face, but I see that that's a mask, and I see what's behind the mask. I hear this person talking about this subject, but I hear the voice of their pain. I hear the voice of their body. I hear a whole lot more of what's really going on behind the scenes. And for some people new to practice, they'll want to tell people about it. They want to make that person see that, there's so much more to the story that they're telling themselves. That generally backfires. And you should never offer that. But it comes from a good place, right? People are like, "Oh, that's not really what's happening. What really the brick wall you're really running into over and over again is this thing." And I know that because your body's telling me. But that doesn't work. It, and always ask first. Consent in all things, y'all. Always ask. Be like, I think I hear a little something else. Would you like to hear that? I keep getting this image of this brick wall and it's got this label on it. Do you want to talk about that? Do you want me to give you that? Always ask first. I just unfriended and blocked someone who thought they knew what was going on for me personally and slapped it right out there on Facebook. And I was like, wow, that's a little rapey, and you're out. I just don't have any patience for stuff like that anymore. Anyway, when when big events are happening, big events and eclipse energy and Scorpio season and winter and all the things we're moving into, you have to know where you're at. You have to know where you are on the continuum of everyday human versus connected to the oneness, space holder, eternal being. We have that continuum of perception. Some days I'm just a regular old human being and I judge things and I get super annoyed at things and I want to say a lot about a lot of stuff, and I'm just in the human and I'm selfish and I just want people to shut the fuck up. I just want people to quit fighting each other. I just want it my way, right? I just wish that I could be the controlling person who's like, okay, y'all knock it off and you shut up and I don't want to see this anymore and stop eating sugar. It's making y'all crazy, all the stuff. That's just everyday human stuff we deal with. Not feeling spiritual at all, not super interested in holding space for anybody except my own ego. Then on the oneness side, it's like everything that's happening is exactly perfect in the big long story of humanity, of which our lives are one paragraph on one page in a chapter in a book that has 1,000,000 chapters in it. This one life, our 80 to 100-ish years, if we're lucky, um, one chapter. That's it. And we can't see the rest of the chapter. I mean, sorry, one paragraph inside of a chapter, inside of a book. You know what I mean? Like, it's literally the blink of an eye, this one lifetime. And everything happening is that long story, the long, unknowable, when we're in human form, the unknowable story, which requires of us to have a lot of faith and trust and do our own work and tend our own gardens and take care of our own space so that because we can't see the long story, we're at least doing our best to keep our own house clean. Yeah. It's the old speck in the eye and the log and the yada yada, right? We always want to be messing in other people's business and telling other people what to do while we have a log in our eye or whatever part of the Bible that is. It's easier to look outward and say, if you would just this or that, if you would change this or that, then I could feel better. Then I could have hope for humanity. If you all would just stop sitting down and planning how you're going to kill each other and who it's okay to kill and who it's not okay to kill and the rules of engagement, and we're going to have a war, now let's make up a bunch of rules about it. How about just not having a fucking war? The insanity of it. So it is difficult. It is difficult to listen to people who are just stone cold asleep. They are just living that zombie life, walk around saying dumb shit, not knowing how to research but thinking they do, having all kinds of theories that may or may not be true. It's just a lot of noise, right? And if you're sensitive, it can feel like you're just walking around drowning in the static of it all. And then you're walking around drowning in the sorrow of it all and the pain of it all. And it can be easy to forget that there are other things we can listen to. We tend to tune in to what we're aligned with, right? If I'm aligned with sorrow, and grief has been a big theme of the things that I'm working through this lifetime, I hear sorrow first. If there's a orchestra to listen to, my ears tune into the strings, right? The strings that play the sad Samuel Barber type music that makes everyone cry. That's what I'm attuned to. I hear the sorrow first. If I want to hear more than the sorrow, I have to remind myself that there is a tune of joy. There is a tune of anger. There's a tune of happiness. There's a tune of love. I need to tune my energy to also hear. It's not saying, oh, I'm not going to listen to sorrow anymore. It's like, oh, I'm going to listen to sorrow, but I'd also like to hear the woodwinds. I'd also like to hear the drums. I'd also like to hear the brass. I want to hear the joy and the anger and the peacefulness and the calm. I want to hear all those sounds. I want to be aware of the whole orchestra, not just the sorrow section, not just the angsty, angry section, not just listening to the drums of war. I want to also hear the flute playing peace, the piano that's playing this beautiful, peaceful melody. I want to hear all of it. So in order to hear all of it, you got to know where you're at. If we let ourselves be dominated by the energies that we're attuned to, it's hard to pull yourself out of that, and it becomes magnetic in the way that we don't like. In this case, the sorrow section just gets louder and louder and louder and drowns everything out until the only thing I can hear is the sadness of the entire world. So how do we keep our balance in that? The first step is you have to know where you are. You have to know your own familiar bad feeling place, because that's the one you'll always slip into under stress. If you're tired, you don't feel well or whatever, your tendency is going to fall into your familiar bad feeling place, which for me is sad. And then self-pity. Not anymore, but it used to be that. Now it's just really sad. Before it was strongly victimization and self-pity. Why me? How come? It's a gross place to be, and I'm glad that I've made my peace with it and loved it enough that it has shifted to sad now is the familiar bad feeling place, which is a lot better. So we have to know where we're at. I have to know what my familiar bad feeling place is. What sound in the orchestra am I likely to hear first? And when I know that, I can recognize that I have fallen into that space and I'm obsessively looking for news articles that are in that energy. Or I'm, only hearing from people that are also in the sad energy. Because nobody else can get through to me if I'm deeply invested in the moment in the sad energy, right? I can't hear the other sounds in the orchestra. I have to go, I know. I see what's happening here. I've watched too many news things. I'm picking up on the sad sound. And okay, now these are the exact things you can say directly to yourself. Oh, I'm in my familiar bad feeling place. What else is available? So then you identify where you're at, and then you start asking questions. Know where you are on the continuum of everyday human versus limitless being. Identify what emotional energy you're in alignment with. Your familiar bad feeling place is usually, whatever it is. And then the questions open the door for the shifting. So the off balance is only hearing that one sound, only being aware of that one energetic signature. Then the questions are, what else could be going on here? What's trying to happen here? What places could this take us that I would define as really good? I wonder what kind of magic can come out of this level of darkness. I wonder what kind of waking up is being presented to humanity. I wonder what energy I can contribute through a prayer or an act of service that would, introduce into the collective concrete energy a little bit of air, a little bit of space, a little bit of love. I wonder what I can do. I wonder how do I need to pull weeds out of my own garden? Do I need to plant some seeds for the spring? I wonder what I need to do to feel better so that at least my corner of the collective is a little bit lighter, a little bit more fluid, a little bit more dynamic or filled with life force energy, right? So it requires a lot of talking to yourself and waking up enough to recognize, to have that objectivity, to recognize where you are. Oh shit, I slipped and fell in the pity party cesspool. Oh, I'm in the pity party land. Whoops. The faster you catch that, the faster you catch your grumpiness with everybody else. Like, you dumb fuckers, like what, when you're off on that space of, or the despair of, why can we sit down and talk about rules of engagement for killing each other, but we can't sit down and figure out how to pay for everyone to have health care? What is wrong with us? That sort of stream. Okay? That energy doesn't go anywhere. It just spirals you further down into the depths where nothing can really change. Yeah. But you got to catch it first. So if you're listening to this podcast and following along at all, you're already at least catching yourself more often than you did maybe 10 years ago. You have to have that separation and the ability to assess yourself. Where am I at? How come I'm so grumpy about everything? And you can have your moment of, what the fuck, guys? What the fuck? You can have that, or you can have those tears. You can have that awareness of the collective's pain. You can have that, but you don't drown in it. You don't fall into the whirlpool and get sucked right down to the bottom. You're aware of it and you process what you can of it because it's in you, or you wouldn't be aware of it, right? So as we just previously discussed, you're in alignment with some specific energy signatures, and those are the ones you gravitate to, and then you process that for yourself. You can't process other people's pain. You have your cry, you have your fit, you throw your tantrum, you do what you do, and then you go, okay. Then you go into questions. Questions are always the key. Questions are always the key. Nothing opens up until we ask the question, because asking the question means we have made our energy available for something else, some alternative, some other way of seeing things, some sliding maybe down the continuum to the oneness and recognizing that, all right, we're here, we're having our life experience, we're doing our thing, and humanity's going to be fine, the world is going to be fine, we're not here to fix everything, whatever you say to yourself, but you start talking to yourself. You coach yourself back up into What feels better to you? What feels more productive? If you're aligned with sadness all the time and despair or anger, then, getting a little moment of peace might be all you can do. And that's fine. That's enough. It's enough to keep getting a little bit more peace and a little bit more trust and a little bit more faith, a little bit more energy to pray, to hold the vision of what you'd rather have, rather than perseverating on the images that exist right now. Now it's too late, right? It's too late now to influence the images that we're seeing. But we can start projecting and adding images into the quantum field, into our aura, so that at least we're trying to get out ahead of it and plant some beacons for the future, some planting our staff in the ground. Those of you who've heard me talk about the vision I had one night about you planted this staff in the ground and all the gold particles of light start to gather around the idea of, and then we don't hold it long enough for it to manifest. But you can do that now, right? You can hold the vision and the feeling of what a world would look like, where if someone said, hey, let's go to war, but let's make some rules around it, it wouldn't even be a possibility. Everyone would be like, what are you talking about? We quit doing that 100 years ago. What are you even talking about? We don't kill each other anymore. Have you lost it? Have you taken a drug? Are you drunk? Like, you can imagine that. You can plant that possibility into the field. But to do that, you have to go through those steps. Where am I? What am I feeling? Is this my familiar bad feeling place? What do I want to do now? What do I want to feel now? Let me acknowledge it, witness it, hold it, embrace it, do all the caretaking things. And also, what do I want next? What would I rather be doing right now? Looking at yet another horrible image, or imagining a world where that's not even a possibility? Imagining a world where that's a long distant part of our future that we can't even imagine how we ever did such crazy things. So that's sovereignty, right? Knowing where you're at, dealing with it, facing it, being present with it, letting it flow through, and slipping into another energy stream. The metaphor I always use about the river, there's a million different strands in a river. There's cold spots, hot spots, warm spots, spots with fish, spots with nothing, spots with rocks, different temperatures, different qualities of light. We get to swim in the energy streams and choose what stream we're going to flow in. But until we wake up, we can't choose. We don't even know we have a choice. Y'all are past that if you're listening and still listening. You're past that. You already know you have a choice. You might not make the best choices every day, but you know you have one. Okay? So, when you're aware of all the garbage going on behind the scenes, it's enough to be aware of it and then hold an energy space for that to just die off, for that to just dissolve. But you have to stop staring at it. You have to stop trying to make it go away, because when you push against a rock, you're connected to the rock. Your hand is on it. You're connected to it. So you have to take your hands off of whatever you're trying to push or change and shift upstream or shift overstream or understream, shift into the stream that you want. You have to choose. You have to be aware. You have to ask those questions. You have to choose. And you may have to pull yourself away, because the familiar bad feeling place is very fascinating. It's very familiar. All the drama is very fascinating to parts of us. We're like, oh, what's happening now? Oh, what's happening now? Our brains, even just on a mechanical meat suit level, our brains get some dopamine from that. And if you're a dopamine seeker because you don't have enough, then it can be extremely fascinating to go get one more hit, one more hit, one more hit. And you might have to grab yourself by the scruff of the neck and say, you know what, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're not spending another minute on TikTok. We're not spending another minute listening to NPR. We're going to do this other thing, and you may have to drag yourself over to the other thing, especially if it's not familiar, if that process is not familiar. If you're more familiar with being like spotting the liars and finding it upsetting when people are lying and scheming and manipulating and hurting people, when you're aware of that, it can be hard not to look at it. But it's jarring, right? It's like the one cello whose sound suddenly went out of tune. It's like almost unbearable. Um, but you can pull yourself away from that and listen for something else and become focused so intently on the something else that the other stuff just drifts out of your head. So when that happens, then some people can feel bad because they're like, well, I'm not watching the news, or I'm not aware of world events, or I'm not paying attention to my mother-in-law anymore. And I'm not, so then you can be called a bypasser. Well, you're spiritually bypassing if you're not down here bleeding with everyone else. Well, you're not commenting on your page, you're an asshole. You're not, you're avoidant, you're a bypasser. Yeah, maybe, sometimes. Most of the time, if you've done your work, you're not bypassing. You're building a fucking future that doesn't have this garbage in it. But your attention and your energy is building right now, today, what will become physical reality a week from now, a month from now, 100 years from now. But you're building it today. You're not required to always comment on everything, even if you are a thought leader. You're not required to pick up every crusade that comes down the pike, because there's always another one and another one and another one. There's always something to campaign for. And I have my pet projects that I quietly donate money to or contribute to in the ways that I have to contribute to them. So only you know if you're bypassing. And you are bypassing if you try to skip over feeling the familiar bad feeling place. Feeling the reaction of, you know what, that politician is a manipulative fuck and is orchestrating all this behind the scenes, or this group is orchestrating this whole thing behind the scenes, and it's making me crazy because nobody hears it. Well, first of all, lots of people hear it, lots of people are aware of it, and they're doing what they can do, and now you need to do what you can do. I hope this is making sense. Everything is always going to come back to you know yourself better than anyone else. Are you bypassing? Are you letting yourself flop around on the couch when you need to drag your ass up and go for a walk in the sun? Only you know that. And we can bamboozle ourselves better than anybody else. So, the last piece about this is responsibility. You're not responsible for making everybody change. You're not responsible for making everybody hear that orchestra. If the people around you can only play the one note, they're only aware of the one note, you have to let go of feeling like it's your responsibility to make them be different. It's not. It's not even our business. We can be aware of it. But when we start going, you need to wake up. You need to hear what's really going on here. You need to see who's really pulling the strings here. Now we've crossed over into somebody else's business and we're out of alignment. And it doesn't do them any favors, and it sure as hell doesn't do you any favors. You can be aware of it and say a prayer. Oh, wow. That person is not seeing this other aspect. Oh, this person is saying a lot of things and they're not hearing that their body is saying something completely different. Interesting. Okay, I'm aware of that. Am I doing that? Am I aware of it because I'm also doing it in some other area? We can go into self-inquiry. Why do I feel like I need to shake them and wake them up? Why do I feel responsible for fixing this mess that I'm aware of? Yeah? So we have to be awake ourselves and then consent in all things. Asking first before we try to poke somebody awake or bust their bubble or make them hear what they're saying, the incongruity, or make them become aware of the incongruity in the mainstream, the people who are unconscious. Adding your own light to the collective is the most powerful thing you can do. If you want to wake people up who are unconscious, be conscious and then hold the vision of them awake. So letting go of our fearfulness that makes us act in controlling ways, you need to change so that our planet doesn't blow up. Well, we don't know where our planet is heading. We all have different perceptions of the future because the future isn't chosen yet. It's still being created. So we can contribute to the future that's being created. Or we can waste a lot of time and energy trying to wake people up who aren't ready to wake up yet. And we can do a podcast episode. That's what my podcast is about. That's why it's not produced and professional. It's a place for me to add to the collective what I feel is important. And that's the end of it. I'm putting it out there for people to hear. I no longer care if it's received or not, or if it's ever heard by anybody, or if it's offensive to anyone, or if I'm going to catch judgment or flack about it. I don't give a fuck. My responsibility is to put it out into the field. That's it. Where it goes from there is not my business. All of you probably have experienced this of how frustrating it is to hear someone, what some people say, talking out of their ass. They're just saying the dumbest shit. Or they're saying stuff like, I've tried everything to fix such and such problem. And you know them enough to know that they have not tried anything. But they're convinced that they have. They're convinced that they're awake and spiritual and all these things that they 100% are not. They're just blah, 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 a lot of hot air. And their behavior says a completely different story. Okay, you can be aware of that. You can offer, and then you can look at why is it holding your attention? What needs to shift in you so that you can shift your attention over to someone who is open to your wisdom and advice, who is internally needing someone to help wake them up, right? Why are you focused on the people who aren't ready for that? And how can you shift your attention over? I include myself in all of this. I know I say you a lot, but I always mean all of us. How do we spend our time and energy in the places where it can do the most good, even if all that is making sure we're not crazy from sugar intake or alcohol or drugs or whatever clouds you? How can we make sure that we're 100% as best we can aware of where we are and asking the questions to open up new avenues? How can we do that? Then it's very likely that what you write about, what you podcast about, if you like talking, what you pray about, is going to be highly effective because you're not coming out of a fearful, controlling place or an angry place, but a place of, oh, I'm a human, they're not awake, I'm not fully awake, but I'm more awake, so let me spend some time envisioning a future where these things don't exist, where there's more joy, where I'm aware of the whole orchestra and I get to enjoy the whole symphony of music that's available, knowing that not one is better than the other, Not one's more preferred than the other, because if you're hearing the whole thing, you get to choose which one you tune into. All right? So it's a little bit repetitive, but it always comes back to, where am I? Is this my familiar bad feeling place? Do I want to stay here? I wonder what's trying to happen here. I wonder how else I could see this. I wonder what I can contribute to this situation that might make it better for me and everybody around me. I wonder, I wonder, I wonder. And then taking the action steps that come forward. And making peace with everyone gets to have their own journey. Everyone gets to stay asleep as long as they want to. And it can be cruel to try and wake people up who aren't ready to wake up. It can be very damaging. And if you do break through, it won't last very long, and then they'll hate you for it because you hurt them. You expanded their consciousness when they weren't ready for that. If we just trounce in there and do that stuff, we end up creating a lot of damage. And you don't want that. I don't want that for you, and they don't want it. All right, so awareness, embracing your own stuff, asking loads of questions, and then taking action on the next step, the next thing that you can act on. All right, I'm going to stop there. If you've ever had COVID, you have my sympathy and blessings. It's the worst. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I'm very glad for, again, I'm glad for vaccines and things that I think made it quite a bit easier for me. And I wish that it gets that part of our world, that virus just continues to become more and more benign, more and more of just like, oh yeah, I had the flu, no big whoop, that kind of stuff. All right, until we talk again, think less, feel more, and take good care of yourselves. All right, we'll talk to you later.